AITA for letting my girlfriend embarrass herself while trying to dump me at graduation? My name is Nathan. I am 25 years old, and I recently graduated with a degree in civil engineering. For practically all of college, I was with Haley. When I say all of it, I am not exaggerating. Our story started even before classes officially began, in one of those introductory workshops the engineering department organizes to help new students get up to speed. I was not particularly sociable back then. I came from a pretty strict family. They always taught me that studying was the priority and distractions came later. So I went to that workshop with the mindset of simply doing my duty and heading back to my apartment. Haley was sitting 2 rows in front of me on the first day. I remember she did not catch my attention right away for anything physical, but because she was the typical person who seemed to have everything under control. She took notes, asked questions, and answered when the professor asked for participation. It was obvious she was also taking what was coming seriously. The first time we spoke was over something silly. They put us in teams to solve a physics exercise, and I ended up with her. The conversation was completely academic, nothing special, but there was a weird sense of familiarity, as if it were easy to talk to her without forcing anything. After that workshop, I did not think much more about it until the semester officially started and I saw her again in several classes. That is when we started running into each other almost every day. First it was greetings, then small talk between classes, then studying together for midterms. Everything happened very naturally. Haley was disciplined, smart, and surprisingly calm under pressure. I was also quite methodical, so we clicked quickly. In less than 2 months, we had already become inseparable within the engineering school. If we had to do a lab, we were together. If we had to prepare presentations, we looked for each other. If one finished an assignment first, they helped the other. Our romantic relationship started shortly after. There was no grand romantic declaration or movie scene. One night we left the library after studying late. We grabbed coffee and ended up talking about personal things for the first time. Families, insecurities, expectations, fear of failure. Before I knew it, 2 hours had passed. Before saying goodbye, she hugged me in a different way, longer, and a week later we were already boyfriend and girlfriend. During the first few years, everything was extremely stable. In fact, too stable. We were never that dramatic couple that breaks up and gets back together every month. We hardly argued. We had similar goals, similar schedules, similar habits. Our friends used to say it seemed like we had been designed for each other in a lab. And the truth is, at that time, I believed it too. We spent an absurd amount of time together. In engineering, that is not rare because the major consumes you alive. Reports, labs, calculations, projects, pulling all-nighters before deadlines. But with Haley, the exhaustion was less heavy because we supported each other. When one was overwhelmed, the other helped. When one got frustrated with a class, the other pushed them. There was also something that strengthened that bond even more. We both had some of the best grades in our generation. It was not something we went around announcing, but it was known. The professors knew who we were, chose us for academic competitions, and asked us for help with department activities. Little by little, we became that model couple everyone knows inside a university, responsible, consistent, apparently functional. And I say apparently because looking back now I understand that many cracks already existed, even if I did not want to see them. The first real change in Haley appeared in our senior year. It was not sudden. No one wakes up being a different person overnight. It was something quieter. Isolated comments, small phrases that at the time did not seem important. One night, while we were grabbing dinner after a tutoring session, she told me, "Don't you feel like we missed out on a lot of things by living just to study?" I shrugged and told her it was normal, that there would be time to rest when we finished. She smiled, but did not seem convinced. "I'm not talking about resting. I'm talking about living." At that moment, I thought she was just exhausted. Senior year was heavy for everyone. Between internships, a senior design project, final exams, and graduation paperwork, anyone could feel suffocated. I did not give it too much importance. The problem was that this idea started repeating itself. She increasingly talked about parties she never went to, spontaneous road trips, new people, different experiences. She started saying she felt she had been too proper her whole youth. She mentioned it with a mix of joking and frustration. At the same time, she started getting much closer to a group of female classmates she barely hung out with before. They were girls known for being big partiers, always organizing nights out, bar trips, and weekend getaways. They were not bad people, but they definitely had a completely opposite mindset to ours. I hung out with them a few times and noticed something almost from the beginning. They loved putting ideas in Haley's head. "Girl, you've been with the same boyfriend since we started," they would tell her, laughing. "No way. You haven't even known the real world. You're going to graduate and then settle down like a 40-year-old woman." They said it all between laughs, as if it were innocent humor, but there was an obvious intention behind it. What made me uncomfortable was not so much their comments, but Haley's reaction. She did not stop them. She did not say enough is enough. She did not defend me. She just laughed softly or changed the subject. Sometimes she even looked thoughtful. I also started noticing she was more distant with me at specific moments. We still saw each other every day, still worked together, still occasionally crashed at each other's apartments. But there were periods where she seemed absent, as if a part of her attention was somewhere else. I tried to talk about it once. I asked her directly if she was having doubts about us. Her answer was quick. "No, of course not. I'm just tired." I wanted to believe her because it was easier to believe her. Besides, outwardly nothing seemed to change. We were still the same efficient couple as always. Our classmates still saw us as a unit. Professors still used us as an example. In fact, that public image was what ended up pushing us onto the stage where everything exploded. 2 months before the graduation ceremony, the department announced they wanted a representative speech for the graduating class. Since I had the second best GPA and Haley had the first, they called both of us into the office. The coordinator told us something I still remember. "You two symbolize perseverance, excellence, and teamwork. It would be perfect if you spoke together." My parents were thrilled when they found out. For them, it was a huge source of pride. Haley's parents were also happy. After so many years, both families practically knew each other by heart. We had shared birthdays, holidays, and meals after big exams. Accepting seemed like the most natural thing in the world, and we accepted. Over the following weeks, we worked on the speech. At least that is what I thought. We met several times to write down ideas, thank professors, talk about the effort of the major, acknowledge our families, and close with a motivational message. Nothing out of the ordinary. But as we made progress, Haley started changing things on her own. It was not anything exaggerated. She changed paragraphs, adjusted the tone, said she wanted it to sound less cold and more authentic. I did not object because, honestly, I trusted her. She had always been a perfectionist and good at expressing herself. There was just one detail that left me with a weird feeling. In one of those meetings, while we were reviewing the closing, she told me, "I want to add a personal part at the end." Personal how? Something spontaneous so it doesn't feel so stiff. "Okay, as long as we don't go too far off context." She smiled. "Trust me. It is amazing how such a simple phrase can haunt you later." Trust me. I did, and that was probably the last time I truly trusted her. The week before graduation was full of paperwork, photos, signatures, turning in documents, and the typical artificial nostalgia that sets in when everyone knows a chapter is about to end. We took pictures with classmates, with professors, with old project models, with caps and gowns and hard hats. In all those pictures, we appear smiling as if nothing was wrong. If someone had shown me those photos without context, I would have sworn we were a couple about to start a new life together. I had no idea Haley was already preparing a different kind of closure. The day of the ceremony arrived on a Friday afternoon. The auditorium was packed. Entire families, teachers, students from other semesters, friends, cameras, flowers, the typical elegant chaos of those events. My parents were sitting almost in the very front with an excitement that broke my soul just looking at them. My mother kept taking pictures even before it started. Haley was by my side in her cap and gown, flawless as always. I looked at her several times before starting. She looked calm, even too calm. I assumed it was confidence. Now I know it was something else. And it was exactly right there, while we waited for our names to be called to go up on stage, when the worst moment of my life began. When I heard them call us for the speech, I felt those normal nerves anyone gets when speaking in front of hundreds of people. Nothing out of the ordinary, my hands a little cold, a dry throat, a racing heart, but there was also pride. We had spent 5 whole years breaking our backs in that major, and somehow that moment represented the official close of it all. We walked up to the stage together while the auditorium applauded. The coordinator shook our hands, handed us the microphone, and stepped aside. In front of us was a mass of faces, professors, classmates, relatives, cell phones recording. I took a deep breath and looked at Haley. She nodded as if everything were perfectly under control. The speech started exactly as we had rehearsed. I opened by thanking the university and the teachers for their patience during our years of education. Then she continued talking about the silent effort behind every student. The sleepless nights, the retaken midterms, the impossible projects, the constant fear of not being good enough. Then I followed with a part about our families. I saw my mother discreetly wipe away a tear, and that made me smile. The audience was attentive. Some nodded, others laughed at the lighthearted parts. Everything was going well. It was the right kind of institutional speech, emotional, but not cheesy. Haley spoke with impressive confidence. Her voice was firm, steady, perfectly modulated. No one could have imagined what was coming. We reached the final part, the one that in theory closed with a message about our professional future and the responsibility of building a better society through our field. I said my last segment, she said hers, and the audience responded with a long round of applause. I was already relaxing my shoulders, ready to step back. Then Haley took a half step forward. It was a tiny movement, but I felt it immediately. She got closer to the microphone again while the applause was still going. Before stepping down, she said, "I want to say something that isn't on the paper." There were a few soft laughs. People thought it would be a cute improvisation. So did I. I even smiled. Mistake. Haley let out a breath and looked directly at the audience. Not at me. Everyone here talks about effort, discipline, and the future. And yes, I guess that's all very good. But the truth is I've spent years feeling like I lived locked inside an overly proper version of myself. Some people frowned. Others kept listening with curiosity. I tensed up just a bit. This was not what we had discussed. While everyone went out, traveled, met people, and did fun things, I was studying or meeting expectations, always being the responsible one, the studious one, the perfect girlfriend, the perfect daughter. I felt a small pit in my stomach. I looked at the department coordinator on the side of the stage. She also looked confused. Haley continued. And today, on the day this chapter officially ends, I realized I don't want to be that person anymore. There was a murmur, that kind of collective noise when an entire auditorium does not know if they are hearing something inspiring or something inappropriate. I remained motionless, trying to figure out where this was going. I want to truly live, she said. I want to go out, make mistakes, meet new people, make decisions without worrying if they fit the image everyone expects of me. A few female classmates in the back started clapping timidly. I even heard a couple of whistles of support, and then a horrible intuition pierced through me. I did not know exactly what was going to happen, but I knew it involved me. Haley turned her head toward me for the first time. She did not hold my gaze for more than 2 seconds, just long enough for me to understand that this was not impulsive. She had made up her mind. That is why she continued with a slightly tenser voice. I also want to close another chapter right here. I felt my legs go ice cold. I am not exaggerating. It was a physical sensation, as if all my blood had suddenly drained. Nathan, she said in front of the entire auditorium. I know this isn't the most comfortable way, but I need to do this. Our relationship ends today. I did not hear anything for a second or two, literally nothing, as if the sound in the room had been muted. Then came the real blow, a massive murmur, hundreds of mixed voices, muffled gasps, people asking each other if they had heard correctly. My mother froze. I could see her from the stage with her mouth half open. My father was stiff as a statue. The professors looked at each other without intervening because they did not even understand what the heck was going on. I kept looking at Haley. I absurdly hoped she would smile and say it was a joke. She did not. I respect you and I thank you for these years, she went on. But I need to be free. You're the only guy I've been with, and I don't want to reach 30 feeling like I never experienced anything else. Every word was worse than the last. Not because she was yelling, not because she was hysterical, but because she said it with an almost clinical coldness, like someone reading a decision that had already been made. Several people let out an uncomfortable sound. Someone from a row yelled, "No way." I could not move. I had an unbearable mix of shame, disbelief, and anger rising in my chest. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to swallow me. I wanted to wake up, but I was still there under the lights, turned into a spectacle. Haley swallowed hard and added the sentence that completely broke me. I don't want to stay tied to a life I feel I didn't entirely choose. Tied. That word ignited something in me, because suddenly it was not just a public breakup. It was presenting me to everyone as some kind of burden, as the symbol of her confinement, as if I had been the reason for her sacrifices. And that was a lie. I never forbade her from anything. I never limited her. I never asked her to stop living. We had built that routine together, but there she was, using me as the dramatic finale of her personal liberation speech. I felt like I could not breathe. Haley lowered the microphone slightly, as if waiting for understanding, or maybe applause, or perhaps simply relief for having let out what she had been keeping inside. I do not know. All I know is that in that instant I looked at my parents' faces, then at the whole auditorium waiting for my reaction, and I realized something very simple. If I stayed quiet, this scene would haunt me for the rest of my life. I did not think too much. It was pure instinct. I took the microphone out of her hand. Her eyes widened in surprise. She did not expect me to reply. I took a breath. My voice came out shaky at first, but audible. Then I said, looking at the audience, "This whole speech was to announce that you got bored of being a saint, and now you want to try new relationships?" The auditorium erupted into a mix of shouts, gasps, and a brutal murmur. Haley took a step back. "Nathan, don't oversimplify it. Don't oversimplify it." I cut her off, adrenaline already rushing. "You just ended our relationship in front of our families, our professors, and half the department as if it were part of the program." Some people started clapping. Not a happy clap, more like that nervous applause that happens when someone says out loud what everyone is thinking. Haley tried to get the microphone back. I did not let her. "You could have talked to me in private yesterday, the day before, or a month ago." I kept going, but I guess that wouldn't have given you a big enough audience. Several awkward laughs were heard. She shook her head, visibly upset. I didn't want to keep pretending. "No, of course," I answered. "You wanted a memorable moment." That hit home because several faces in the audience changed immediately. People started to understand that this was not a brave confession, it was an exhibition. Haley looked toward the coordinator as if looking for help, but it was too late. I had too much pent-up anger, and I was just getting started. At that point, I was no longer thinking clearly. I am not going to lie or try to paint myself as someone noble who reacted with elegance, because I did not. My face was burning, my heart was pounding against my ribs, and I felt such a strong sense of embarrassment that every word just spilled out on its own. I looked at Haley and then at the auditorium. Everyone was waiting. That was the strangest detail of the whole scene. Hundreds of people holding their breath, as if they had completely forgotten they were at an academic ceremony. "Tell me one thing," I blurted out. "Did you really need a stage to feel brave?" Haley swallowed hard. She tried to say my name, but I did not let her. "Because if this is about experiencing things and meeting more people, like you just said, you could have spared me the show and simply admitted you got bored." A heavier murmur spread. It was no longer just laughter. It was that collective reaction when the shame shifts direction. Haley was pale. "That's not it." "Then explain it better," I replied. "Because from up here it sounds exactly like you wanted to turn our graduation into your personal announcement." Several people let out involuntary bursts of laughter. It was not an explosion of cruel mockery like in a movie. It was worse in a way. Stifled laughs, muttered comments, heads turning to look at each other. Haley looked down. Her hands were shaking. That was the first time I noticed she had no plan for after her big revelation. She had rehearsed the moment of ending our relationship. She had not rehearsed being questioned, and that completely changed the dynamic. I kept going because honestly, I could not stop anymore. 5 years with you, 5 years building absolutely everything together, and you picked this minute to say you were tied down. I paused. Tied to what exactly? To someone who studied with you? To someone who supported you every time you wanted to quit? Or tied to not having enough parties? That last sentence provoked several reactions. I clearly heard a professor say, "This is a disaster." Yes, it was, but no one could turn it off now. Haley finally spoke, and her voice no longer had its previous confidence. "I didn't want to keep feeling obligated to a life I don't know if I want." I nodded slowly. "Perfect. You had the right to feel that way. What you didn't have the right to do was use me as an accessory for your independent speech. That generated the first clear round of applause in support of me. It was not everyone, but it was enough. Haley looked up and, for the first time, looked at me with something that seemed like a mix of anger and desperation. Maybe she expected me to break down. Maybe she expected silence. Maybe she expected me to leave. What she did not expect was to lose control of the narrative, and she was losing it. I took a deep breath. I could have stopped there. I could have dropped the microphone, walked off the stage, and kept some quiet dignity, but I was too hurt to act with intelligence, so I delivered the final blow. I wish you a lot of luck looking for that freedom you wanted so much, because destroying someone in public doesn't make you brave, it just makes you irresponsible. The auditorium responded with much louder applause. Not deafening, but clear. Haley opened her mouth, closed it, and then her eyes filled with tears. It was instant, as if only in that moment she understood the magnitude of what she had done. She had not only exposed me, she had exposed herself too, and not in the heroic way she had imagined. She tried to say something else, but her voice cracked. The department coordinator quickly came on stage along with another professor and took the microphone from my hands. The ceremony is over for both of you. Step down immediately. Her tone left no room for argument. Haley partially covered her face and walked toward the side stairs. She did not run. There were no thrown objects or absurd attacks, just something much more real, the unbearable weight of hundreds of eyes following her as she cried. Her parents got up right away and went after her. I remember seeing her mother looking completely devastated. My father was already walking toward me too. My mother was crying, but out of helplessness. I walked off the stage feeling my legs tremble. As soon as I stepped down, 3 classmates approached me. "Are you okay?" "What the heck was that, man?" This got totally out of hand. I did not know what to answer because the truth was simple. I was not okay. Even though in that moment many people patted my back or told me I had done the right thing, I felt hollow, empty, as if someone had grabbed 5 years of my life and shredded them in front of me. The ceremony continued, but no one was focused on the diplomas anymore. Everyone was whispering, checking their cell phones, commenting on the scene. Because yes, of course, someone had recorded it. Several people, actually. That very night, videos started circulating, first in department group chats, then on Facebook, then on TikTok. In less than 24 hours, there were thousands of comments from strangers voicing their opinions on my relationship as if they had lived with us. Some defended me. She tried to embarrass him, and it backfired. Others said they were both terrible. Others, as always happens on the internet, made up things that never occurred. I read too much. That was my mistake. I spent 2 whole nights watching videos, comments, memes, and edited clips of the scene. There were accounts using only the part where she ends the relationship to present her as an empowered woman. There were others using only my response to frame me as someone humiliating a girl. And there were a few people who understood the core issue. 2 adults destroying years of a relationship in the worst possible place. 5 days later, Haley's mother posted a long message on social media. She said her daughter was emotionally devastated, that she had been the victim of online harassment, and that my reaction had fueled a wave of mockery. She was not entirely lying. Haley was indeed being attacked online, but the problem was that the full video showed who had started the public exhibition. The post did not have the effect she hoped for. People argued for days. Some asked for empathy. Others said every action has its consequence. I stayed silent. I did not reply to a single thing, not local interviews from university pages, not private messages, not requests for an explanation. I was exhausted. The last thing I wanted was to keep feeding the circus. 2 weeks later, I heard through a mutual friend that Haley had gone to live with an aunt in another state for a while. We never spoke again. Not a message, not a call, nothing. And honestly, after what happened, there was no civilized way to resume a conversation. Months passed before I could think about the situation without feeling a mix of anger and shame, because here comes the part that almost no one understands when watching stories like this from the outside. It does not matter if you won the public argument. It does not matter if people clapped for you. It does not matter if the internet took your side. When a long relationship dies like that, no one really comes out victorious. I did not feel like a winner. I felt exposed, betrayed, ridiculed, turned into content. With distance, I recognized two truths at the same time. The first, Haley acted in the worst possible way by using an academic event to end our relationship and build a dramatic moment. The second, I also let anger dictate my words and turned a private wound into an irreversible confrontation. Maybe if I had dropped the microphone and walked away, I would remember that day with less noise today, but I did not. I responded the way an embarrassed man responds in front of everyone, without a filter, without a strategy, and with a bleeding ego. Since then, I learned something I would have liked to learn a different way. There are people who confuse honesty with a spectacle, freedom with impulsivity, and emotional closure with the need for an audience. And when you decide to turn your private life into a public performance, you no longer control how the show ends. That afternoon, I did not just graduate from engineering, I also graduated, in the most brutal way possible, from the naivety I had about love. Comment. I've been reflecting on this story quite a bit. What stood out to me most is the importance of protecting our own self-respect in every situation. When someone crosses an important boundary, we have the right to speak up for ourselves. Still, the way we choose to respond can either help us heal or make things more painful. I truly believe that setting clear boundaries is an act of self-love and responsibility. Even in difficult moments, treating ourselves with kindness speeds up the healing process. I hope you take some time to think about the relationships in your own life right now. You deserve to feel valued and at peace with the people around you. Choosing calm over chaos is a powerful way to honor your own growth. Let's keep focusing on building lives that feel safe and meaningful to us. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.